I had just finished an exhibition in Cannes, where they have the film festival, and it was pretty symbolic, hardcore works that I did, a lot coming from the Black period, which I think was between 74 and 81. But I would always throw a flower into a piece as an escape route. You know, when you're living as an alcoholic, pot smoker, crazy American in Paris for so many years, and then you move to the south of France, and you have the sun and the light, and you get sober. Somehow everything changes. The God that I had as a child, when I started drinking, went out the window. When I stopped drinking, he came back in. Isn't that curious? Something to say about alcohol, which, being from an alcoholic society, is I'm an oddball now. I don't drink. I don't smoke pot. I don't take sleeping pills. I don't drink coffee. I try to keep the body and the mind clean. Satya Sai Baba, an avatar from India, was famous for saying, a healthy body is a healthy mind, is a healthy body. So it's a saying, but if you live it, it's different. I get the benefit of seeing the change in my work. And then somebody, an editor in Paris, Michel Bruto, she said, Nall, why don't you, no, it was Elizabeth Matthews, the Countess. She said, why don't you, instead of putting a flower in each piece as an antidote to an escape route, which later the roach metamorphosed into a butterfly, why don't you do just a flower piece? And I said, I don't want to be commercial. I don't want to do that. She said, well, you were a flower child, weren't you? And I said, yeah. You love your grandmother's camellia bushes, don't you? I said, yeah. She said, why don't you do just flowers? I said, do you think the French intellectuals will let me pass as a contemporary artist if I do flowers? And she said, try it. So I brought out the flowers and I did an etching. The rose, this was the first one I did. And it was very successful. Michel Bruto, who was the biggest editor in Paris at the time for Etchings, she said, why don't you do a series of those with like 8 big ones, and I'll buy the plates. I said, well, you won't buy the plates, but you can buy an edition, because Daddy was a banker. He had a little chain of banks. So I knew the value of a plate. You could milk as many editions as you could print, as long as the plate would hold up. And then, as Rembrandt and several of the others, they just make a new plate digitally. And you can print thousands and millions of them by doing plates. So what I did, I said, I will sell you an edition of 99. You give me 10% of the edition, so I'll take 10. You take 99, and you pay me so much. And that was the first big thing that I sold to an editor. Well, no, that was the second. The first was 2 dolls, Dying Dolls, Making Love, and In a Swing, to the Galerie des Chapitres in the 70s. And then this was the second big editor that bought the edition of Flowers, but I kept the plates. And these were printed on the second edition. These are second edition on arches or reeve paper. This one is the rose. And this one is the strelitzia. And you see the bird of paradise, bird, I use the bird skull, same one that's here. And this one I use the fish, because in one of the verses of the Bible, it says in the Apocalypse that God will take out the 2-legged, the 4-legged, the birds, and the fish, or something like that. And he's going to wipe it out for one reason or the other. I'm really not a biblical scholar, but I remember the things that are important, that we have a price to pay for whatever we do. This one is the human, the pansy, It's the fish skulls in this one. This one has, oh, this was after I just traipsed across the Sahara Desert, hitchhiking. Camel tooth. Of all things, I just saw it again. So, to do these flower etchings and then to concentrate on them and then starting to do nothing but flowers, and every now and then I would throw something else into it, but it was basically about the beauty of the flower and the freedom and the peace movement, the flower child. And even though I didn't dive into the movement wholeheartedly, because I've never done that except in my work, I thought that I could demonstrate more behind an easel and a drawing and get more recognition and be truer to the statements that I wanted to say than getting in a bunch of people and making a public protest. There are other people that don't have my facility of expression, and that they're expressing themselves, which is good. And some people like to do both. I don't like to march. I really don't. Since ROTC, I was leading my platoon on the university campus in the quadrangle, and I forgot how to make them turn right and left, and they all filed into this big oak tree, and they were falling on both sides like dominoes. And they said, "No, why don't you go work in the office? Can you type?" I said, "Yes." They said, "Go to the office, quick." So, yeah, so that's how the flowers pieces were born. It was my love for my grandmother's flowers, living in Troy, going to Murphy Park, picking making daisy chains on North Renot Street here in Troy, Alabama, and with Ruthie and Alan and Rebecca, I forget her last name, as a child. I just love flowers. And it took that long for me to have the courage to paint just a flower piece. Because we all living under these labels of, you're a man, you do this, you're a woman, you do this, and inheriting these traditions that might be good for some people, but I just couldn't live with them that strong. That's why I fled to Europe. I thought it'd be different over there. No, it's the same. It's the same, except there's a poetic justice that artists are allowed, that they're beginning to be allowed here in the United States, because they know that we're all mad. The artists, the writers, the musicians are just wackos running around creating all this stuff and expressing everything. Salvador Dali told me, he said, "Don't you ever edit anything out of your expression. Say everything that you have to say through your work. You're a human being, and everybody out there that's looking at it are humans, and they will identify. Do not edit anything." I had a good teacher.